Morning, good afternoon, good evening, wherever you're in the world. I am Mama, or you can call me Mo, a first-year student majoring in ITHM and also a proud member of the PATA Thailand Bangkok University Student Chapter. Today, I would like to welcome you to our PATA Youth webinar entitled Ocean Conservation, co-organized with Bangkok University. I am personally very excited for this webinar as we have invited three special guest speakers. We have Mr. Dmitri Cooray, Deputy Managing Director at Jetwing Hotels, Ms. Susanne Etti, Global Environmental Impact Manager at Intrepid, and finally, Ms. Janine T, Marketing Representative of Palau Visitors Authority. Today's webinar is a 1-hour section starting with a presentation on ocean conservation by a student from Bangkok University, insightful presentation by our guest speakers, followed by a panel discussions and live Q&A. Before we go on, allow me to do some housekeeping announcements. Please use the Q&A function on the bottom of your Zoom screen as shown on the screen, of course, if you have any questions for our guest speakers. Please do not ask any question in the chat, as chat function is there for you to introduce yourself to the group, to introduce yourself to the guest speakers, and really connect with each other while we're doing the panel discussion. So before inviting our speakers to stage, let's start off with an introduction presentation, which will be done by Mr. Angzewe or Benzil, a first-year student majoring in ITHM, also a member of the PATA Thailand Bangkok University Student Chapter. Please welcome Mr. Angzewe for his presentation.
Good morning. So give me a few minutes to share my screen. Good morning, ladies and gentlemen. I'm Angzewe, and you can call me Benzil. Currently, I'm studying at Bangkok University International, specializing in international tourism and hospitality management. It is such an honor to be present as a PATA youth member today at this place. And our today's topic will be about the ocean conservation, where we raise awareness about preserving sea life and protecting the life under the oceans. Concerning the sustainable goal number 14, which is life below water, it is a responsibility for everyone to start caring about the sea issues and protect all marine life around the world. Before I start giving the whole presentation, I want you guys to think some questions, and that is like, why do you think that we should care about the ocean? The question is, why do you think we should care about the oceans? Of course, there are many benefits that the ocean does for us, including the food, the air we breathe, and even the transportations. Oceans being the biggest part of climate regulation would be the most unavoidable factor, where they provide 50% of the oxygen that we surely need to survive. Additionally, oceans are mostly participating in our tourism industry, which means we are more likely to see most of the popular tourist attraction in a coastal area. Therefore, healthy ocean leads to not only positive environmental impact, but also advantages economic development. So let's talk about what kind of things are making the oceans unhealthy. Plastic pollution. Plastic pollution is one of the biggest issues in marine life, which we have been dealing over the past year and stay dealing with it. Studies show that yearly there are 14 million tons of plastic are ending up in the oceans. And all these plastics are found inside 80% of the ocean waste. That's a huge number, right? So, and the next fact is we cannot leave out the sea creatures when we talk about the victims of the plastic pollution under the sea. So these plastic wastes are the biggest threat to sea animals, where they get tangled up by the tanks and end up getting injured, or even worse, which is losing their life. Any big or small sea creatures get badly affected by these plastic, and we could see how this plastic pollution under the ocean is giving negative impact, which is food safety and quality, human health, coastal tourism, and also climate changes. Observer believes that the volume of the plastic pollution entering the ocean each year is becoming double or triple by the year of 2040. And this expectation is a threat not just for marine life, but also for the human beings. So what we can do to preserve these? As the saying goes, small things matter. We could start doing things either big or small, which is going to be effective for our ocean preservation process. I used to participate in one particular campaign, which is Say No to Plastic. The campaign is about like whenever we go to buy something in the store, we should say like, we have to say no to plastic. So at like this campaign, we have to start doing things to affect in our environment. So last not but least, as I have mentioned from the start, we have the responsibility to make the world we live a better place where the ocean participated as a bigger part. So let's stop polluting our oceans and also let's start the changes from ourselves. Thank you, everyone.
Thank you so much, Mr. Aung for your presentation. Now let's warmly welcome Mr. Dmitri Cooray to share about the initiatives and projects of Jetwing's Hotel representing the hospitality industry. Mr. Cooray, please say a few welcoming words to our audience and share with us your insights.
Hi, Bon, everyone, and thank you to the PATA youth and the university for having me as a speaker. So Jetwing Hotels, starting off, I think if you move to the next slide, I can just go through a little bit about our history. So Jetwing just celebrated 50 years of operation. We have been in the hospitality industry in Sri Lanka for 50 years, and it was started by my grandfather in 1973. And since then, since 1973 until today, we have grown as a company. We started off with a 6-room property, and today we have 33 properties around Sri Lanka and 1 property in New Zealand. And pretty much we cover the entire island of Sri Lanka. Sri Lanka being an island, the ocean plays a really important part to us, as both tourism and fishing are 2 of the main industries in Sri Lanka, and as this is a worthy topic, as ocean conservation is a very important aspect, not only for tourism, but for the general sustainability of the planet as well. So, moving on, I will talk about some of the initiatives that Jetwing has been doing over the last few decades. So recent, like we started off sustainability, it was my grandfather's initiatives in the 1980s, 70s and 80s. Before these words, sustainability to tourism, all these fancy words were coined, he always believed in living with the local communities and ensuring that there is benefit for everyone, because tourism should not only benefit the hoteliers or travel agents, but the local community as well. And we started off our journey. He started in 1973 in Nidambo, which is very close to our airport in Sri Lanka, and which is a fishing village on the beach. So since the 1970s, we had a very close relationship with the beach, the ocean, and our properties. And a few years ago, we started off with this initiative, which we call the butterfly effect, for our sustainability strategy, where we divided it into 6 categories, which you could see on the screen: energy and carbon, water and waste, biodiversity, community and culture, family, and sourcing and production. So all these are areas we identified as key areas which help us to enable us to make our properties as sustainable as possible and to ensure we do as least harm to the environment. And talking on the water and waste management, if you move to the next slide, please. In the 1970s and 80s, Sri Lanka didn't have a proper waste disposal system, especially when it came to storage. And in the now it is mandatory by law that any hotel should have a storage system, a storage treatment plant. But in the 70s, 80s, all the hotels, especially in the near to the coastal belt, were sending their toilet waste into the ocean, which naturally was a big problem. And actually, it was our company in 1991, together with a German company, where we established the first ever storage treatment plant in Sri Lanka at a hotel at our property, which you see. These are some old images of our hotel. It doesn't, it's revamped now, but in 1991, we developed it, the storage treatment plant. And today, across the island, it is mandatory to have a storage treatment plant. And we are proud that we initiated this in the 1990s. And as a responsible company and responsible citizens of our country, did our part to minimize the waste which goes into the ocean. As I think rightly mentioned, the ocean plays a key role, not only to the industry, but to the planet as well. As the health of the ocean is key to global warming and all these things. In today's world, we see a lot of unstable weather, a lot of freak weather in many countries. So it's really important that we sustain and try to do our part as much as possible. And Jetwing as a company, we have been always striving to be as sustainable. One aspect is the water side, with the ocean and the water conservation. Plus, we have other various other solar parks and so on as well to generate energy. Move to the next slide, please. In addition to the larger things like the storage treatment plant and so on, we also do a lot of education towards both our employees, our guests, plus local schools. So what we believe is always it's important to get the younger generation aware of the benefits and the value of not only the ocean but any natural resource. And we work with the wildlife department and other bodies in Sri Lanka for turtle hatchery, because turtle hatching, because turtles, the eggs are poached by humans for sale and so on. So we try to work with we try to protect them, of course, and send them off to the ocean. Plus, we also do. Sri Lanka is one of the best places in the world to see the largest mammal, which is the blue whale. And Sri Lanka also has the unique ability of being one of the few countries where you could see the largest mammal in the world, which is the blue whale, plus the largest land mammal, the elephant, within about a 2.5-hour drive. So we also work with local operators in promoting very regulated whale and dolphin watching, plus carry out a lot of training programs for the education of our youth plus associates working with us. Moving on. And then, like mentioned in the earlier presentation, one of the most important, the biggest damages to the ocean is the use of plastic water bottles or PET bottles. So we as a company about 10 years ago introduced at all our properties bottling plants, glass bottling plants, where we purify the water and then we use glass bottles. And we were the first hotel company in Sri Lanka to have our own bottling plants. The reason why we started this, because Sri Lanka didn't have, we only had 1 or 2 suppliers, but they couldn't meet our demand. So we thought out ourselves, right, we will start with our own bottling plants, and we provide complimentary water in our rooms and to our guests by having our own bottling plant. As a result, reducing whatever impact of plastic bottles we as a company would have used. Plus, we also carry out many beach cleaning initiatives with both our associates plus the youth, where they volunteer their time, and then we clean the beaches and responsibly dispose of the plastic and other waste collected. So I think as responsible professionals coming into the industry, it's really important that whatever you do it with the heart, because there are many things that, if you look at a financial sense, it's much cheaper to probably buy a plastic water bottle and give it to your clients. But you have to do things not only thinking with your mind and doing it with the heart. I think one of the advantages of Jetwing being a family business is we always look at the long-term benefits, whereas certain larger corporations, when it's mainly driven by a few individuals who are working on numbers, then you would always think of the profits. Whereas I think as you should be responsible and carry out initiatives which will have long-term benefits to the society and to the world. So thank you for having me, and I think we'll carry on with the next presentation. Thanks a lot.
Thank you so much for sharing, Mr. Cooray. And it is amazing to know that Jetwing Hotels was one of the pioneers of maritime sustainability in the hospitality industry. And once again, it is such a great honor for us to have you with us today. So now let's move to another special guest, Ms. Susanne Etti, Global Environmental Impact Manager at Intrepid, for her presentation, representing the DMC sector, Destination Management Company. Ms. Susanne, please take the floor.
Thank you very much, and it's great to be here today. I'm joining you today virtually from Naarm, Melbourne in Australia, and I would really like to kick off my presentation today with an acknowledgement of country for the land I'm on. I hold great gratitude and respect for the traditional and continuing custodians who care for this land, the Wurundjeri people of the Kulin Nation, and I would like to offer respects to all our old people for it, as they brought us together. Next slide, please. Are you okay to do the next slide? Yeah, thank you. So as you heard, I work one before. Sorry, now I moved one too fast. Just a second slide. Yeah, thank you. As you heard, I work for Intrepid Travel. And so before I dive into our climate and ocean conservation work, let me tell you a bit about Intrepid first. So we have traveled a long way to be here, and we are so glad we did. Since Intrepid's humble beginnings, and that goes back to 1989, our founders have been really passionate about creating positive change through the joy of travel and creating experience that benefit both people and the planet. In fact, their very first business plan included donations to communities long before they were even making any money. Now we are the world's largest adventure travel company and the largest travel B Corp. Intrepid offers over 1,000 trips across all 7 continents with immersive and sustainable experience-rich travel experience for the curious, the connected, and the conscious travelers. Our not-for-profit, the Intrepid Foundation, and our commitment to the UN Sustainable Development Goals ensures that our words are never too far from our work. Next slide, please. So the tourism industry is really at the forefront of the climate emergency. We have a front row seat to the crisis that is unfolding in many iconic natural areas and destinations across the globe. At the same time, before COVID hit, the sector actually contributed to 8% of global greenhouse gas emissions. So individually, And collectively, as a global industry, we are all feeling the effects of new extreme weather events. The increase in global average temperatures since pre-industrial times is already damaging the planet's ecosystem in ways that are harmful to biodiversity and dangerous to people across the globe, from the polar regions, forests to our oceans. Next slide, please. Coastal and marine tourism is highly dependent on the quality of coastal and marine ecosystem, as well as extremely vulnerable to the threats such as climate change and biodiversity loss. A healthy ocean is therefore the foundation upon which the tourism sector can thrive. So ensuring the long-term health of our ocean is critical to support those local communities and economies which rely on the tourism industry. I like to share in the following examples of our initiatives on our trips with customers, the Intrepid Foundation, and also at industry level. Next slide. So Antarctica has become a symbol for climate change. So how does a sustainable travel company balance operating trips in this fragile ecosystem with meeting its environmental and social responsibilities? So Intrepid made the decision to operate in Antarctica as we believed it would offer an incredible experience and create value for our customer, partners, and shareholders. We also knew that operating our own product would provide us with greater control of all aspects, and that's including the environmental considerations. More responsible Antarctica tourism must include a heightened commitment to decarbonization. Like all Intrepid trips, we measure our emissions and decarbonize our operations in line with our science-based emission reduction target. And the Antarctica voyage, like all our trips, are 100% carbon neutral. The continent has long been supported by strong governance, and unlike many of the other destinations in which we operate. So much of the approach to tourism in Antarctica can provide a baseline for a more responsible cruise industry, for example, worldwide. As part of our decarbonization, we identify areas for improvement, and even small changes can really have an impact. So for example, to eliminate seafood from our regular service, or introducing one plant-based evening on board the Ocean Endeavour. Next slide. Thank you. The Antarctic Treaty governs all activities on the continent, which means travel operations tend to be developed both directly and indirectly in the pursuit of peace and science. This makes holidaying in Antarctica truly different from a cruise anywhere else. We also know that travel brings people together and provides that glimpse into a fragile environments, extraordinary wildlife, and the threats facing these places. This shared understanding and deeper respect for other people and places play a crucial role in protecting our planet for the future. So Intrepid has incorporated citizen science into our polar voyage, most notably in our partnership with the Worldwide Fund on WWF Giants of Antarctica sailings. Alongside our regular team of Antarctic experts, WWF Australia scientists will join this tour to share insights into whale conservation as they conduct cutting-edge research on these underwater giants. This allows travelers to work alongside those scientists to further their research into whales. Data collected on these trips, including by travelers, contribute directly to their understanding of whale population. The citizen science is providing travelers with an opportunity to understand the environmental implications of the place they are visiting. Thus, the science being conducted is real and leads to real results, as we have seen time and time again. Next slide, please. The convenience and functionality and low prices of plastic products, including single-use plastic products, have made them an essential part of the global economy, as we have heard. However, the prevailing linear plastic economic system has made those single-use plastic products one of the most pressing environmental challenges of our day. Travel and tourism too can be negatively affected, as the most essential element of a destination, namely its attractiveness, is undermined by plastic pollution. which in turn can affect visitors' numbers and the jobs and livelihood that depend on the sector. An example how we incorporate addressing plastic in our supply chain is shown on our Vietnam trip. In Ha Long Bay, a UNESCO World Heritage Site and a very popular travel destination, customers visit the Green Life Center, which is committed to turning Ha Long Bay's trash into treasure by collecting discarded items and skillfully turning them into beautiful handicrafts. Customers meet the team behind the important course and learn how to transform rubbish into a useful and reusable. Next slide, please. Intrepid Travel invests into sustainable management and protection of marine and coastal ecosystem to avoid significant adverse impacts. Our non-for-profit organization, the Intrepid Foundation, has partnered with Blue Carbon Lab, which is based at the Deakin University here in Victoria, Australia, for citizen science days for our staff who can take up to 20 hours of volunteering each year. Blue Carbon Lab is playing a pivotal role in wetland conservation and generation, which is expected to have a transformative impact on native flora and fauna and reducing carbon emissions. Next slide, please. The tourism industry needs to change and move forwards towards a more sustainable and resilient model to ensure this long-term economic viability, especially when you think about small island development states. We truly believe that the tourism industry wants to be on the right side of history and play its part in securing a long-term economic and environmental sustainability. The Glasgow Declaration on Climate Action on Tourism is a good example of how the industry has come together for the first time with coordinated action. The Glasgow Declaration is a catalyst for that increased urgency about the need to accelerate climate action in tourism and to secure strong commitments to support the global goals to halve emissions over the next decade and reach net zero emissions as soon as possible before 2050. Next slide. In closing, we can create that equitable, just and sustainable world that benefits people and nature, but we must really activate everyone, and that's at government, business, and citizens level to do their part and do it now. Thank you.
It was such an amazing presentation, Ms. Susanne. Thank you so much, and we will be looking forward to learn more later during the panel discussion and also the Q&A as well. So now let's move to our final guest speaker, Ms. Janine T, Marketing Representative of Palau Visitors Authority. Please welcome her for her presentation. Ms. Janine, please enlighten us with what you have prepared.
Okay, so hello everyone, Ali from Palau. Again, it is truly an honor to be part of this youth-led webinar. Thank you again for allowing me to share in the ocean conservation space. So can we move on to the next slide? So a little bit about me. Again, my name is Janine Tewid. I am the marketing representative at the Palau Visitors Authority. Being born and raised in the Republic of Palau, I have been surrounded by ocean all of my life. And in a country that is a pioneer in marine and environmental efforts, I began working at the Palau Visitors Authority shortly after completing my studies abroad. And within the tourism sector and beyond, we have been part of a multitude of works from community outreach to environmental efforts, all while showcasing the uniqueness of our island. Next slide, please. Can we move on to the next slide? Okay, so a little bit about the Palau Visitors Authority. It is a semi-autonomous body created by law to promote and encourage the development and marketing of tourism in the Republic of Palau. It acts as a liaison between the tourism industry and the community, particularly in the states of Palau, which are 16 in total, in accessing and encouraging the establishment of potential tourist sites and suitable activities for the purpose of spreading tourism traffic throughout the Republic. Okay, next slide, please. So as part of We are also responsible for generating awareness about tourism, and that includes our ocean conservation initiatives. And I'll be going over 4. So our plastic-free commitments, our community outreach programs, social media, and others. Next slide, please. Okay, so to begin with the plastic-free incentives and initiatives, in 2017, the Palau Visitors Authority declared to be a plastic-free organization, encouraging other organizations, both government and non-government, to join in support. Moreover, through our programs developing community-based tourism in Palau, PVA has made it a priority to educate community groups to invest and utilize in plastic-free alternatives in their products or services. So an example of this would be a tour that you can experience in Palau, which is called Experience IRI. It is a community-based tour that was created in collaboration with IRI State. So the local women, we educated them and informed them about the harmful effects of single-use plastics and disposable plastics. So we eventually moved them towards alternative plastic materials, which you can see in the following pictures on the side, which include leaf bowls, banana leaves, and betel nut husks. These are used to showcase food during these tours. Next slide. So for our outreach program, in terms of events and conferences, the recent one that we were able to host was our Ocean Conference 2022. This was co-hosted with the United States, Palau being the first small island developing state to host such a conference. And the significance of this event was that it allowed global leaders and ocean advocates to come together in one place to collectively commit to ocean solutions, resulting in 410 commitments worth $16.35 billion that were going to solve 6 issue areas of the conference. And the Palau Visitors Authority led the outreach program. So through our outreach programs, we were able to host various events and programs highlighting the areas of need for our ocean. And it was significant because this was also the first time that a youth delegation was able to make a collective commitment at our ocean conference. And even more special, the youth delegation was led by a committee of youth, me being one of the program leads. Next slide, please. Okay, so for clam planting and turtle releasing, one of our outreach programs, this was in partnership with the Bureau of Fisheries and the Koror State Government Department of Conservation and Law Enforcement. So for this activity, we were able to release 30 green turtles back into the sea and plant 400 species of smooth giant clams. We invited local youth organizations to join this activity, and we were able to plant and release these species into the Rock Island Southern Lagoon, which is Palau's UNESCO World Heritage Site. And along with this, we also taught these youth groups the importance of this activity. So for example, planting these giant clams, they play a vital role in the ocean ecosystem because clams act as food, shelter, and reef builders and shapers. So their presence in the ocean is also an indication for the reef's health. And these clams were planted in designated areas by the conservation department. Okay, next slide. And then tree planting. This is just another example of the works that Palau Visitors Authority does with other various organizations from different sectors. So we're part of the Palau Earth Day Committee. So in 2021, we carried out a tree planting activity in the outlying states of Palau, including Peleliu, Angar, and Kayan, where students were able to participate and not only plant trees, but also carry out beach cleanups in their respective islands. And it's significant that these islands were chosen because they are one of the most vulnerable islands to climate change and effects of climate change, because they're heavily surrounded by water. Okay, and next slide. So educational outreach programs, this was part of our ocean outreach program that PVA did. So we went to various primary schools to talk about the importance of our ocean, and we were able to conduct interviews with the young students, focusing on what the ocean meant to them from a youth perspective. So the questions you would ask would be, what does the ocean mean to you? Just to start the conversation at a young age. Next slide, please. Okay, so moving on to our social media outreach. So utilizing social media, PBA has done multiple social media outreach and throughout our various social media accounts, and at times in collaborations with other agencies in the Republic. So an example of a challenge that we did was the Generation Ocean Challenge. It was a 4-week challenge that we hope to continue to encourage positive change and advocacy for the protection of our ocean. So the 4 weeks that this challenge was up, it was surrounding, was highlighting safe and fun activities that promote environmental consciousness. So for example, we had week 1 challenge. It was preserve, conserve, practice, small yet impactful ways you are protecting our ocean. And ending with week 4 challenge, sea to cuisine, demonstrate sustainable fishing methods and its end product, the dish. Okay, next slide, please. Okay, so in terms of an international audience, so on our social media pages, the way we raise awareness towards responsible tourism for visitors is that we would constantly put up, for example, best practices when visiting Palau, highlighting Palau's conservation efforts, such as banning reef toxic sunscreens, as well as highlighting the different marine species that visitors would see on their dives. Next slide, please. Okay, and for the last slide, these are just other collaborative efforts that we were able to accomplish as of last year. So for the Generation Ocean Challenge poll, we did this awareness activity for that local high school students as a way for them to participate in this educational challenge poll, where we asked them questions that highlighted Palau's conservation efforts. For the Ocean Festival that you see, we invited local students to participate in the fashion show, where they would repurpose, recycle, upcycle materials into final looks. For Green Fair, it was an Earth Day activity where the theme was invest in your community, invest in your planet. And then lastly, we hosted a night market with the Palau International Coral Reef Center. Okay, next slide. Okay, and that is all, Masulang, everyone. Thank you for this opportunity.
Thank you so much, Miss Janine. And it was such an eye-opening, and I would like to partake in some of your activities one day.
Okay, so now it's a session where our beloved audiences are always looking forward to, panel discussion and Q&A session. So a familiar face is back again, myself. My name is Nick. Nice to see everyone here. And I am your Para Youth Ambassador. So everything related to Para Youth internship program, I spearheaded. So if you have any questions, always please reach out to me whenever you have concerns or questions. So enough about me. So we'll get to the panel discussion. So the first question I have goes to Dmitri. So I believe that a lot of students are interested in joining hospitality industry, and the projects and initiative you showed, it was really amazing. And I was actually really amazed when we talked during our initial meeting that Jetwing Hotels was one of the pioneers in doing ocean conservation initiative through the gray water filtration. So aside from those big projects and initiatives, what kind of day-to-day operations do you have that involves ocean conservation or contributing to ocean conservation?
Thanks, Nick. Yes, like you mentioned, we do a lot of big sustainability initiatives, but in addition to that, I think one of the key things we started almost 10 years ago was the bottling plants. I think the plastic bottles was, I think, covered in almost all the presentations, and that is one of the main items which there's especially in countries like mine, Sri Lanka, and a few other countries around the world, which still do not have proper disposable recycling facilities. The more developed countries in Europe, the US, Australia have better recycling plants, but countries like ourselves in South Asia, Africa, and so on, the facilities aren't there for recycling. And that is why when we decided, because the reason we started our own bottling plants is because there weren't many large companies who could provide our requirements. So Jetwing as a group, we have a little over 1,500 rooms in total. And okay, not that we are full every day, but on average, say if we have at least 70% occupancy, almost 1,000 rooms into 2-3 bottles per room, you're looking at, as a company, we probably go through 4,000 bottles a day. So when you add up all these numbers, it really makes a huge volume. And by us eliminating this single-use plastic bottles, in the last 10 years, we have gradually reduced our reduced our impact to the ocean, because it gets disposed in not proper methods. Plus the weekly or beach cleanups when we do, because it's really important to like I mentioned in a presentation, the education factor, the benefits of the ocean, not only for tourism, but for the livelihood. And a lot of Sri Lankans also depend on fishing as a source of income. But many of the fishermen themselves, sadly, don't understand the value. They throw their nets, they throw their whatever the items they take to sea, they, without bringing back to land, they just dispose it into the, just throw it off the boat. So it's really important to the education element. So we try to foster a couple of schools close to our properties. And we try to start young, because sometimes the elders, they are reluctant to change. They're used to a certain way of life, but at least if we can educate the youth, then hopefully in the future, things can be much better. And these are very small things that can be done. And as all the students and others listening who are pursuing a career in this industry, it's really important, like I told before, to always also think with your heart as well when making decisions, and whatever is best for the society and the planet.
Thank you for your answer. Thank you. And also, I have a quick follow-up question from the audience. And I personally know that you have a background in F&B operations as well. So I think this is a very good question for you to answer. So it is efficient for large-scale resorts and hotels or hotels to build a sewage plant, just like Jetwing hotels. But what about restaurants or resorts and hotels that doesn't have the capacity to build a sewage plant or build a gray water plant within their property? How do you think they can contribute to ocean conservation?
So even in Sri Lanka, the requirement for building a storage plant is, if you have a property above 20 rooms, you have to, by law, you have to have but if it's a house, a restaurant, a small villa, you could build what they call a septic tank. So storage treatment plant will take in the grey water, recycle it, and then you could use it for watering of plants or reuse it into your into the whatever means you can use it. But a septic tank is where you collect all the waste from the toilets, and there is a method where through bacteria it eats up the waste. There is a process in that. And you could also, even I'm sure in most parts of the world, in Sri Lanka, what they do, if they are the local government have the cans, they will come and empty your septic tanks and take it to a larger facility and dispose of it. So that's a much more reasonable and a cheap option for smaller properties to do. So what you do is you build it, so you don't need to always have a large. There are many other alternatives as well without only looking at the big picture. So septic tank system can be used for a small operation.
Okay, thank you for that. I think that answered the question. And my second question goes to Susanne. So as this is a PATA Youth webinar for the youth community of PATA, we have a vast amount of youth audiences here with us today. And a lot of them would be curious about a career in sustainability, just like yourself as an industry leader in sustainability. So what are some key points that you would look into during recruitment for a newly graduate student trying to get into the industry?
No, really important question, and thank you for asking this. I guess I start sort of where my passion is. I'm a trained biologist, maybe also background. So I don't come from a traditional tourism background. So I trained as a biologist with a master and a PhD, and then actually moved into industry. So I'm bringing sort of the academic side to the industry. But I think it's just kind of globally in the context of our conversation today is like the industry depends, as we all know and have heard, on this healthy global ecosystem, but uniquely they are vulnerable to the environmental damage, and especially seeing the impacts of climate change and biodiversity that causes those interconnected environmental issues. So this has a broad impact on our industry, and so a sound knowledge of the impact of climate change on business and the sector, as well as really understanding risk and opportunities, is definitely, I think, a really important skill to have. I think it's also about igniting change. So it's kind of the first thing to do is always to start, and certainly think a little before you do. But if you want something to change, you have to start, and like spark lighting a flame. So I would be really looking also how a person is doing this already, maybe through volunteer work, through activities initiative at university. I think it is important in our area to have that direct personal involvement and that passion. I think that's a really important attribute. And there's no better way really than to communicate that sense of urgency, importance, than that direct involvement. If we can show that through like volunteer work, for example, and sharing our direct knowledge, but also that passion for the problem at hand. And I think a third attribute skill that is really important in our industry is just around the collaboration across networks and leading by influence. You will not just work with one manager. Sustainability is touching every single part of your business. So I work with all our DMC and sales offices around the world. I work with our product team, with our marketing team, with finance, etc. So you need to be really good at stakeholder management, influencing, leading projects, but it's also about thinking outside your own business to kind of look at, in the tourism travel industry, obviously at customers and other stakeholders. So that just gives you kind of three attributes to start with.
Thank you. So from your answer, I think I can take away that joining webinars like this also would help, and
Yes.
also getting, of course, students who are the PATA Youth members who join this webinar will be certified, and adding the certification of certificate of participation on your resumes would matter as well. Yeah. But also you mentioned that it is important to do volunteer works. So please, for the youth joining us today, please don't stop here and just joining webinars, but try looking for projects or initiatives that you can join to contribute, starting as early as now as youth. I think that's really important. Thank you for your answer, Susanne. My next question goes to Janine. So I have an interesting question from the audience. So I think this is a right question for you, because Palau is a destination widely known for its maritime environment, ocean environment. So the question is, some tourist attraction sites are destroying the marine ecosystem by attracting the wild animals, such as I've been to some destinations where I've seen some destinations such as whale sharks, feeding whale sharks to attract them near the tourists, or some other wild animals as well. How do you think we can solve this problem? Yeah, how can we solve this problem to protect the marine ecosystem?
Okay, thank you for that really wonderful question. So yes, that is actually it's very harmful for the marine ecosystem when you begin feeding like the species, because they become dependent and all that. So in Palau, there is an office, they're the ones that run the regulations, and they're the law enforcement. It's called the Palau Bureau of Tourism. They're the ones that work closely with us. So we market all these tourist sites, and we have them as our regulators and law enforcers to ensure that visitors, when they come, they're respectful not only to the people, but to the marine environment, and that they're practicing safe activities, and they're not, disturbing the peace in the ocean as well. But not only that, but then it will be a job for, let's say, a Palau Visitors Authority to also generate awareness for our visitors. Sometimes they might not know, and so we would have to take the extra step, initiative to also raise awareness, whether it's through social media, just various outreach, just to let them know not only what they should not be doing, but why they shouldn't be doing it, as a way to cross the bridge and close that gap.
All right, thank you for that answer. I think that answered the follow-up question, which was how do we increase awareness to surrounding community to protect beach and sea? So letting them know why it's bad, and then what we can do to help. So so giving them the background and also what they can do. So thank you for your answer, Janine. And next question goes out to everyone. So we'll go in the order of Dmitri, Susanne, then Janine for the answers. So plastic is something that we need to discuss when we talk about ocean conservation. And I know it was discussed in several presentations today. So how can we motivate travelers to be plastic free? What are you guys doing in your industry? And what are the alternatives to plastic usage that you guys are offering to the guests or tourists, or any stakeholders of your industry? So starting from Dmitri from hospitality industry.
Yeah, so this is it's very important, I think, for the people to be aware of whatever they do. And there are little things you can do, is like, even when they are traveling on a tour, for them, if as operators, we ask them to bring in like their own reusable water bottle, and there are opportunities to fill the water bottles and so on. So to minimize that daily need of using single-use plastic water bottles, things like that. To when many parts of the world, because plastic is a much cheaper alternative to most items, many things are wrapped in plastic, and also there is sometimes a hygiene factor that comes into play. That's why, especially in the hotels, our biggest consumer of plastics are in the kitchen. The main issue being for the HACCP, which is the food health safety reasons, for the food contamination and all. Fortunately, especially for large properties, even for us, as Jetwing, our main use of plastics are in the kitchen. It's really difficult sometimes to have other alternatives, because sadly, plastic is the most convenient thing to be used. And you wrap something in plastic, it's 100% guaranteed that there won't be leakage unless there's some damage. Whereas like in Palau, what we saw from Janine's presentation, you could use leaves, banana leaves, and so on. But the problem is when you have to put it in a freezer and separate it, You could do small quantities, but for larger volumes, it's difficult. So as of now, there is no proper alternative, but I think what they're trying to do, of course, it's not a solution, but it's probably just to make yourself happy. You could say that they're making better quality of these plastic wraps, which are supposed to, if other one took 100 years to dispose or this will probably take half the time. So it's not a solution, but those are certain things which are happening. So there are difficulties when it comes to the operation of hotels, especially the kitchen as an alternative, but definitely when it comes to other single-use plastics like water bottles, takeaway pads, or anything like that, straws, those are small things, using paper straws, or now you have bamboo, metal. So as you might not be able to eliminate 100%, but at least you should try to be 80-90% at the maximum you can go up to. From now, for example, just in all our properties, we don't use disposable plastic amenity bottles. The shampoo, conditioner, we use refillable glass. So wherever possible, we use alternatives. Like so, in the rooms we hardly have we don't use any glass. So the shampoo bottles it's glass or ceramic. The soap, we get the soap without a plastic wrap. So there are those type of alternatives you can. For hygiene purposes, like I mentioned, in the kitchen there are restraints, but everywhere else, the straws which you serve your drinks with, to coasters, takeaway boxes. So it's important where possible you use all sustainable alternatives, and hopefully with the development of technology and all these initiatives in the near future, we'll have a solution for the kitchen as well, where there'll be more biodegradable and more environmental friendly products to be used.
Thank you, Dmitri. I know some of us are guilty on paper straw usage, because I've seen a lot around me that complain about how plastic straws are ineffective and get soggy in quick time. So please, when you guys use paper straws, please, before you complain, please remember this webinar and try to think about the footstep that you can leave in the ocean environment. So Susanne?
Yeah, so I would think wanted to share what we do at different levels. So at an industry level, like contributing to knowledge sharing, so and really educate the industry. So we contributed to the WTTC single-use plastic product review that actually has decision trees, and Dimitri's business is exactly the one that I'm looking for, that basically cancels out all those amenities and the plastic bottles from hotel rooms. But that also leads our role, how we're working with suppliers to work towards and the education and engagement. It's putting in place water filters, for example, so customers can actually refill their bottles. And then speaking of customers, it comes back to customer education, like what is actually in your travel kit. That's your metal straw, your cotton bag, but it's your water bottle, it's solid soaps, for example, etc. So you don't bring plastic containers to a country and then leave those behind. But then also to the question that is in the chat around sort of the bigger impact of micro plastic, it is really like what's happening at industry level, but also across other sectors to finding other options to, especially in the kitchen, food production, etc., how we can actually look at alternatives for plastic, and as an industry really through, for example, the UNWTO plastic pledge, really kind of great change at an industry level, and then cooperate with other sectors and put kind of pressure there on too.
Thank you so much, Susanne, for your for sharing. Last but not least, Janine.
Thank you. So in terms of plastic use, as I've mentioned before in my presentation, for plastic-free alternatives that are being used here in a lot of tours in Palau. So a lot of it is based on the resources that you do have, natural resources. And these are practices and knowledge that has been shared through us in our culture. So we're taking things that have been used in the past and bringing them back into the present. And that's what we're reinforcing now as the Palau Visitors Authority. But then again, in relation to reinforcement regarding plastic use on tours in the tourism industry, a regulation that tour companies have to abide by is that they are actually not supposed to be using disposable plastic cups, plastics, utensils. It's a regulation. So tour companies will actually offer bento boxes. They'll pre-pack the food in bento boxes. So when visitors come, food is ready in these bento boxes that will be reused. All that they're being asked is to bring their water bottles, and they'll offer igloos. They no longer do like plastic bottled water. Those are little things that are being practiced here in the tourism industry. And I think they're doing a big help, actually.
Thank you for sharing. From the answers from all the guest speakers, I think we are on the way to reducing plastic waste. And there definitely would be like in the coming years, I do believe personally that there would be more breakthroughs in technology and innovations that will suggest a material that would be a lot more convenient and a lot more sustainable than plastic, hopefully. So thank you everyone for your insights. And due to the time constraint, we will conclude our Q&A session and panel discussion. Thank you to our guest speakers. And thank you audiences for asking such great questions. For the ones which aren't answered, don't worry. For the unanswered question, we will have them answered for all the audiences by guest speakers through email and share them on the post-event email. So thank you everyone, and back to you, Morris.
Thank you, Nick, and also big applause to our guest speakers as well. So once again, this webinar is brought to you by Palau Youth, co-organized with Palau Thailand Bangkok University Student Chapter, and also in collaboration with the Hong Kong Polytechnic University SHTM, Lombok Tourism Polytechnic, and higher colleges of technology. Thank you so much to dear audiences for attending this webinar, and special thanks to our guest speakers for the presentation and insights as well. If you have any questions or concerns, please do not hesitate to contact the Palau Youth team through email at ytp@pada.org, and have a great day, everyone.